Mr. Groundhog Wants the Day Off, written by Pat Stemper Vojta, illustrated by Olga Levitsky. I will not do Groundhog Day anymore, said Mr. Groundhog. I'm tired of everyone getting mad at me. They see my shadow and blame me for 6 more weeks of winter. I quit. Mr. Groundhog stood next to the hole in the ground where he lived in the park. Everyone would wait there to see him on Groundhog Day. He jogged around the park to help him think. He stopped fast when he saw he was nose to nose with Mrs. Rabbit. Oh, hello, Mrs. Rabbit, said Mr. Groundhog. Mrs. Rabbit smiled. Will you do Groundhog Day for me this year? Asked Mr. Groundhog. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm much too busy getting ready for Easter. I have eggs to color and I must practice the bunny hop to lead the parade. But I have something for you. Mrs. Rabbit lifted the lid of a trunk. She pulled out a vest. This was my grandfather's special occasion vest. You would look very nice wearing this on Groundhog Day. Thank you, said Mr. Groundhog. He slipped the vest on and continued his walk. Then he met Mr. Turtle. Hi, Mr. Turtle. Would you mind doing Groundhog Day for me? Asked Mr. Groundhog. All you have to do is come out and greet the crowd of people. I would, but I can't fit into that small opening of your home. My shell would get stuck, explained Mr. Turtle, but I have something for you. Mr. Groundhog followed Mr. Turtle to a cluster of bushes. Mr. Turtle reached in and lifted out a hat. This is my holiday hat. I want you to wear it on Groundhog Day, said Mr. Turtle. So now he's collected a vest and a hat. Thank you, Mr. Groundhog said as he put on the hat. Next he saw Mrs. Squirrel. Mrs. Squirrel, will you do Groundhog Day for me? I am really sorry, but I would be too afraid to go down into that dark hole to get to your home. But I have something for you, said Mrs. Squirrel. She reached up and broke some branches off a tree. You can use one of these for a cane. It will look nice with your vest and hat. Thank you, said Mr. Groundhog as he hooked the branch around his arm. So he's got his hat, his vest, and his cane. As Mr. Groundhog walked back home, he met Mrs. Raccoon. Mr. Groundhog, you look very handsome. I have something for you, said Mrs. Raccoon. She took a piece of ribbon off her head and tied it around Mr. Groundhog's neck. So she's made him a bow tie. Thank you, said Mr. Groundhog. The next morning, sunlight woke the sleeping groundhog. Mr. Groundhog got up and hurried into his outfit. With all his courage, he reached up and somersaulted out of the hole. He saw his shadow somersault along with him. Then Mr. Groundhog tipped his hat to the crowd. His shadow tipped his hat too. So there's his shadow. The band began to play. Mr. Groundhog reached out his arms and began to dance. His shadow danced too. Mr. Turtle looked at the ground and saw that he had a shadow. He began to dance. His shadow danced too. Mrs. Squirrel joined in. Soon everyone was dancing. So there's everybody's shadows. I never knew how much fun a shadow could be, said Mrs. Squirrel. I'm looking forward to next Groundhog Day. So making little shadows on the tree. Mr. Groundhog was happy. He smiled at his shadow and said, Thank you, my friend. I'll see you again the next sunny day. And here's all the friends. All right, so we are going to make our own groundhog, and we're going to make it out of pancakes. So you can do a breakfast and you can make a groundhog on Groundhog Day. And it's pretty simple, so you're gonna need just a couple things. So some pancakes. So you'll need a couple different sizes. You'll need 2 little ones this size, 1 larger one, and then another small piece of pancake that you can cut for his ears. So if you also are really into making pancakes, you can try to make your own pancake that already has ears attached to it. So there's this one that I did, and it already has ears. Or you can make one with your own ears added on after. So to stick your pancakes on, you can just mix a little bit of icing sugar and water, quite thick, and it kind of turns out like a little bit like a glue. So when you add your pieces on to your pancake, you can do that. And also you could use honey or syrup if you feel like it's sticky enough. And if you're just going to keep your pancake flat, then you really don't need to stick them on. But for today, we're just going to use the icing sugar. So we're starting with our big round pancake. And I did not have many marshmallows, but that's okay. You can cut your marshmallow and you can make pieces that you need. So we're gonna need 4 pieces cut out of a marshmallow. So it'll be 2 front teeth and 2 parts of his eyes. So we'll start with, I think we're gonna start with the teeth, and I have some little pieces cut here for myself. And my marshmallow was kind of starting to get dried out and sticky, kind of a little bit firm, so that was perfect for me for cutting. So if you have some old marshmallows, those would be perfect. So I just took the piece and I tried to cut sort of like a rectangle shape, and it doesn't have to be exact, it's just whatever it works out for. So that's going to be my first tooth. And that's going to be my next tooth. So I started with my teeth. And then I'm going to use 2 little round pancakes for his cheeks. So we're going to add those on for the groundhog's little cheeks. And so we're going to dip that. And you're going to have to just sort of reposition until you have them just right, where you're happy with how they're sitting. So there's his cheeks and his 2 front teeth. And then I have some chocolate chips. And I'm going to use a chocolate chip, but I'm going to use it upside down. So I'm going to put the flat side in, or the pointy side in and the flat side out. And I'm going to use that. And I'm going to stick it right in there tight, and that's going to be his little nose. So that's the beginning of our pancake. And then for the back of his eyes, I've got 2 little pieces of marshmallow, and I'm just going to kind of flatten those out a little. So I'm going to squish those down, and I'm going to sort of make those a little flatter, and they're kind of round. And I'm going to stick those on, and that's going to be for his eye. So you have to sort of decide how far apart you want those so that they're going to look right. So then on top of that, I'm going to put 2 chocolate chips, and those are going to be the inside of his eyes, so the colored part of his eyes. So that's what we have so far. And then last step is to add the corner of his ears. So you can take a little round pancake, and I'm just going to snip it in half, and I'm going to use those for the tips of his ears. Groundhogs don't really have very big ears, they just have little tiny side ears. So there is my pancake groundhog for Groundhog Day.